Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and this is going to be a really fun one. This is basically a Rot and Duelist cosplay, and this is going to be really interesting too because it does a lot of damage and we can get a good amount of Rot. We're going to go over the details here. So for this build, what we're using here is the Rotten Great Axe. We're using the Rotten Great Axe in heavy affinity, and we're going to go over why that's still fairly decent. And then on top of the Rotten Great Axe, I have the Rotten Duelist set on, and then we're using the Ash of War Warcry. So for the affinities to start, the thing that I want to mention here is as far as the affinity goes, the heavy affinity will scale with a B, but it'll act more like an A. If you have 80 in this for dexterity and then you do keen affinity, you'll have around the same damage and you'll get an A, by the way, I think in dexterity, as you will with the B in strength. It's kind of a weird weapon scaling wise, but the point is it's still very much a strength weapon. It can be a little confusing given the fact that you're only getting a B in your strength scaling, but it doesn't matter. You're still going to get close to 900 AR. You're still going to get a lot of damage out of it. And then we're going to talk about why we chose the Ash of War, specifically Warcry, and why it's so powerful with the Rotten Great Axe. First things first though, before we do that, I'm going to show you on the map where to get it, and this ends up going on for about a minute here because he falls off the cliff. If you're using something like the Blasphemous Blade, by the way, this can actually happen, and I ended up dying the first time because I fell with him, but the second time I was able to get the drop. It is in Consecrated Snowfield. Now, for the Rotten Duelist set, you can get that through each one of these. There's a couple of them. I think the last one that you get the cloak is in the Catacombs for Consecrated Snowfield. I'm not going to show that because the video is already a decent length as is. But if you want the set, you have to chase down, I think, 3 or 4 of these guys. And you can get the Rotten Battle Hammer with that as well. Before I show the map and the drop that we're going to get is the main weapon that we're using exactly where it is, although he did fall off the cliff, I want to talk about Warcry and why it's so good. So Warcry has a multiplier on status effects. It's actually going to give us probably around 3 times the Rot buildup that we would normally get with the Rotten Great Axe. And that specifically will only apply to that special charged attack you get with Warcry, but when you use that special charged attack, and you're going to see throughout this video, it does a ton of damage to boot. It gives you more Rot buildup with that special attack. It's somewhere around 3 or 4 times as much. It's just significantly more. Trust me on this, it's a lot more, and it seems to have a multiplier, and it specifically is going to give you just more out of your weapon that otherwise, since it's so slow, will make it difficult to build up Rot. Next up, by the way, in my videos, I'm occasionally throwing in helpful tips. This is a larval tear I don't get too often, so I figured I'd include it in here. So many people are still wondering where some of them are. This is one of the ones that's at the merchant in Syofra River, however you say it, and you could just go to this merchant and buy 1 larval tear, and it's very easy to get to even from early on in the game, since you can use that first well. There it is on the map there, and that's one I don't get too often. I know people are always looking for those. And where do you get the Ash of War Warcry? Well, you get it from Knight Burnell at the War Master's Shack in Limgrave. They'll sell various Ashes of War, but the main one obviously that we're going to pick up here is Warcry. There it is on the map there, not too far from Stormhill Shack. And since we're starting a new game on this character, we are currently going into Journey 19. Let's begin this journey, see how much damage we can do, and see how the Rotten Great Axe holds up on New Game Plus 7. So the first thing we're going to end up facing here is the Grafted Scion. Then we're going to go on, take some early game bosses on, and then we're going to show off mobs, equipment, stats, build, and everything you need to know. This is a powerful one that does a lot of damage. Let's get started. There it is, a big chunk of his HP gone in one hit with that special charge attack. After activating Warcry for the next 30 or 40 seconds, I think it's 40 seconds now, you can use that special charge attack, and it does a lot of damage. It's a very, very, very powerful charged attack. I know that was a lot of varies, but to be honest, I didn't expect this to do as much damage as it did. I hadn't really used Warcry that much, and I hadn't used the Rotten Dual Axe with 80 strength on heavy affinity that often, and I was actually surprised, even to the early game bosses on New Game Plus 7, how much damage we're able to do. With the Tree Sentinel, obviously here, isn't going to go on that long because of how much chunk-wise we're taking off of his HP. We're only using Golden Vow in combination with Flame Grant Me Strength, and we're getting crazy levels of damage. I think the first hit was 3,000, 4,000 damage with that special charged attack. Very powerful. And after 2 very short fights, we're going to go on to Margit now at Stormville Castle, at the beginning of Stormville Castle, Castle Road Tunnel, and we're going to see how much damage we can do and if we can proc Rot on Margit. Alright, let's use the Shackle to get a little bit of an advantage here. Again, the charge attack is going to be a little bit slow. I don't know if I mentioned that actually. I said again, but I'm not sure whether or not I mentioned that. It is a little bit on the slower side, but it's incredibly powerful, and there it is. We're able to proc Rot very quickly on Margit because it seems to have that multiplier on the special charged attacks. Even though I get beat up a little bit here, I was trying to let him tick down a little bit to show off the damage that Rot does. Rot is much better than Poison. It ticks down significantly faster, and even though I think tick-wise it has been nerfed a little bit, it still does a ton of damage in comparison to Poison, which still, in my opinion, needs a buff. So it does a lot of damage on top of the fact that we're hitting very hard with a powerful strength weapon to boot. So we're essentially going to, well, I guess sort of dodge because I probably got hit more times than I should have, but we're going to let him end up being killed by the Rot to show off the damage it does. And we proc that very quickly. That came off, I think, in just 1 or 2 hits on Margit. I think it was around 2 hits before we're able to proc Rot. And then that's it. That's the end of him. He takes a ton of damage from that in combination with the amount of damage we did on our special charge attacks. And goodbye, Margit. So after Margit completely vanishes with relative ease, we're going to go on to Godrick, show off a couple more things, go over mobs, buffs, builds, stats, everything you need to know to use this build and to basically do a lot of damage while proccing Rot. Now, as far as Godrick goes here, we're going to try to get that very quickly. See if we can do the same thing, the same concept by seeing if we can proc Rot relatively fast. And we're going to concentrate once again on that special charge attack because it does so much damage too. Alright, Godrick, he's going to drag his axe on the ground. In short order, we're going to be doing the same exact move that he did there, more or less, except ours does Rot on top of it. So we're going to see what we can do here after taking some damage. Probably shouldn't have taken damage there, but it is what it is. And then we're going to try that charged R2. And then once we use that, we're able to quickly phase change him, I think in like 2 hits, but it was relatively easy. And you can see the Rot is procced as well, making our lives easier, and on to phase 2. I was really surprised how much damage you get out of using the Rotten Great Axe on heavy affinity despite its B scaling, but again, it seems to scale more in line with an A than a B. Don't worry about the scaling too much because you're going to get good damage on it with heavy affinity. By the way, I want to mention real quick, if you're not subbed to my channel and you want an awesome place where Elden Ring content is going on non-stop and we're doing a ton of videos and basically having a good time, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button and then be sure to join the Discord too. It's a great community with over 500 people now, and if you need help with anything, I'm always there to help as well. And down goes Godrick. It was nice to see him go down relatively quickly, and we used Rot in combination with the strength attacks again because it was a good combo. Having this combo is something you can utilize later in the game. By the way, the Rotten Duelist set, not great for poise or posture. You may see me get knocked down a couple times when I probably shouldn't have. You can hit 51 poise with the setup and stats I have, but I wanted to use the Rotten Duelist set for the whole cosplay thing, despite the fact that it's not really a great armor set. Now, while the Rotten Duelist set isn't going to protect you much, it does look sort of cool, I guess. It has the nice red colors and whatnot. It does have something attached to it, though. It does act like Hal in a way, and it can attract enemies and bosses and whatnot more towards you. But again, you're not protected much with this particular armor set, and it doesn't have high poise. Now on to the last boss of this video, which is a Gil, and then we're going to go on to mobs, buff, build, stats, everything you need to know if you're looking for a Rotten Duelist Great Axe setup and build, or if you're just looking something in general that's powerful, hits extremely hard, and can proc Rot too. Yeah, this is definitely one of those ones where I had a lot of fun with it. Granted, I did it on early game bosses and whatnot, but I had a good time with this overall. Taking the clips for this and stuff, I was really shocked with the amount of damage it does because, again, I hadn't used Warcry very often. It wasn't something I was very familiar with because I didn't really use weapon buffs in that sense, those types of weapon buffs anyway, the roars very often, and they could do a lot of damage with strength weapons. They're really powerful and they hit really hard, and then obviously we have Rot as a bonus. Another thing to note, by the way, in comparison to the battle hammer that you get, the Rotten battle hammer, I like this weapon a lot more. I feel like the axe has more range, you can do more with it, you can get really good AR from it, and then, of course, the battle hammer has the same issues that the brick hammer has in the fact that even with the jump attacks and stuff, it's so short that you can often miss. But Gil, I didn't really expect to proc the Rot on, because he has those resistances and because he runs away frequently. A lot of the dragons in the game, they have the same kind of Elden Beast style where they just run away from you consistently. So I wasn't worried too much about proccing Rot on him. I wanted to see how much damage I could do though, and I ended up being satisfied with the damage from the Rotten Great Axe. It does solid damage. That special R2 or right trigger for my instance on Xbox, great damage out of that. It is really solid. On to an NPC invader here who we're going to fight and hopefully end up destroying relatively quickly, just to show this off on an NPC invader at least. And then after we show off this, we're going to show off mobs, and then we'll go over everything you guys need to know. Now, let's see how much damage we can do with Warcry and the buffs. And what are we able to do here? and completely flattened. It is the first version of Anastasia, but wow, yeah, it does a lot of damage. I think it hit her for over 3,000. She got absolutely destroyed by it. Let's do some buffs here. Let's fight a couple of mobs, and then we're going to go over buffs, builds, stats, everything you need to know. By the way, everything's timestamped as usual in the description. I've been doing those lately, and there's also a description that's in there that has all of the equipment you'll need for the video. So if you don't have the time, or you're rushing through, or you just want to be a little bit quicker, everything's always in my descriptions. It's always there. You can look up the items or whatever you need to make the build yourself. I always do detailed descriptions. The only times that I usually don't do the detailed description is when I do list videos, because they're a different style and there'd be way too much. My descriptions would be like literally 5,000 words. It'd be like an essay. But for all of these type single individual builds, I always do the full description that has all of the items you need to put together to make a very powerful build. Even though I'm taking some damage here, mobs are really no challenge, because that charge, that special charge attack, and even our regular hits are able to do a lot of damage. This is an impressive weapon. As I mentioned, in combination with Warcry, it can pretty much take on anything. And as we finish off some of the mobs here with the Rotten Great Axe, I really like dragging it, by the way. It's really cool just to drag it on the ground, get that special charged attack, and then just get so much damage and then absolutely flatten whatever you're fighting. Now, granted, obviously, if they have a shield, it's a little bit different, but you can flatten so many enemies with this while doing considerable damage, and you can also proc Rot. This is a very powerful build. Let's get into buffs and everything you need to know. For buffs, first things first, we're going to drink our Wondrix Physic, which has the Charge tier and the Faith tier in it, so we can do our buffs. Gives us an additional 10 levels for 3 minutes. Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength. Then we're going to fill up our FP. Then we can use Warcry, which seems to stack with everything. And then we get that special charge attack for a lot of damage. This is a really fun one. Definitely got to try this one out. Let's get new equipment for this build. For equipment, we have the Rotten Great Axe plus 25 and Heavy Affinity with Warcry on it. Any seal will do. We have the Raptor's Black Feathers on. Ritual Swords Talisman. Axe Talisman seems to boost the special attack. Roar Medallion will boost this by 15%. Dragoncrest, preferably the Great Shield. And then we have the Faith tier along with the Charge tier. Let's get into stats for this one. So for stats, as far as this build goes, you're going to go with Strength Affinity despite that B scaling. You can go with Dex and Keen and can get a lot of damage out of it, but you might as well go Strength, especially if you're two-handing it and you're at a lower level. You can even get around 60 Strength and then get crazy good damage, because once you two-hand, you get that 50% bonus. As far as the Strength scaling, don't worry about that B. You're still going to get a ton of damage out of this one, and it's still going to be a really potent and overpowered build because of the amount of damage you can do with those special charged attacks. Anyway, this was a build request. I believe the name was Genshin Nor, so thank you for the build request. That was an awesome build with a lot of fun. That was a really good one. If you're not on the Discord, definitely be sure to join that. It's a growing community with over 500 people now. It's been absolutely awesome. If you're not subbed and you love overpowered PvE builds, be sure to check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel. There's like an entire library of builds there now. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys there.